portable music technology, basically invented by Akira Morita and Sony. I mean, in the late 90s, if you had a portable music device, you either had a Sony device or you lied and told all your friends that you had a Sony device. Such was the fear of playground reprisal if you didn't, you know. So portable music, not only the technology, but also the headspace in the mind of the consumer, just owned it. What else? What else did they own? Movies, world's largest movie studio. Yep, games consoles, absolutely. PS1, PS2. What else? At this point, everything becomes an appropriate answer for them, right? They also own distribution of content. You could walk into a Sony store and buy stuff. So, let's do this properly. They owned all the content that goes on an iPod. They owned portable music technology, both the technology itself and the headspace in the mind of the consumer. They owned distribution of content. They own consumer and home electronics. And didn't invent the iPod. So my question is, why not? I'm sorry? The media they were using was not the right media. They were still very much in CD and that sort of audio, so it was a bit of a mind shift. You can quite get that? Yeah. What are some other reasons? Not an innovative culture? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that. I find it's a weird angle though when you think about it, because this is the company that invented portable music. So a lot of people do say it's a lack of innovation culture, and there's probably something in it, particularly as market leader, something about that kind of sense of market leader complacency it sometimes gets, like the second in a market that really drives innovation. What else? No competition? Back then. Sorry? Yeah, they didn't embrace it. So that's a really interesting argument. I mean, a lot of people say digital rights management, or DRM, was the reason Sony actively didn't want digital music to stay. Because they own the content, because they own the video, they didn't want it, because they were worried it would cannibalize their market. By the way, how did that go for them? Do you know what I mean? So interestingly, Peter Gruber, the ex-vice president of Sony Pictures, said that we wish we did invent the iPod. He said it's not this is not a we don't want the invention, we're worried about cannibalization. He was asked this question and he said, I wish we invented the iPod. And to be fair, at like $20 billion a year, same here. I wish I invented the iPod as well. He said the reason that we didn't invent the iPod was that we were just so deep in the silos. Like we were just so, that yeah, we owned everything, right? But that pictures didn't talk to music, didn't talk to digital distribution, didn't talk to home electronics, didn't talk to like major distribution. We were so deep in the silos that we missed the bit that sat across it. In fact, we weren't just deep in them, we actively incentivized the different silos to be in competition with each other, that we missed the piece of innovation that sat across the top, what he called, really nicely, the innovation in the white space. He said the iPod was no one's job at Sony. To get that, you had to be able to work across a whole set of different silos. Fascinating hearing someone from Apple speak this morning talking about how one of the first things Steve Jobs did in '97 when he took over the company was just go, we're just getting rid of the silos. While I'm working here, we're not having those, right? Not a realistic outcome in a lot of places to get rid of the silos, but if we can't get rid of the silos, to at least enable a slice that sits across them. And this is what, coming back from the Global CIO conference in Phoenix, Arizona, what was fascinating to hear was that there was a growing consensus amongst IT professionals that the emerging and the evolving role of IT was fundamentally about enabling information management that sits across the horizontals in a business. Not so much just enabling functionality and productivity down in workflow, but enabling interdisciplinary and inter-silo collaboration. Sony missed the invention of the decade because they were unable to get across the silos. And if we had more time, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things to be said and talked about why I think we're reaching the limits of subject matter expertise-based vertical innovation in businesses. And there's a lot of people saying that right now. That if we really want to tap new value, it's about getting across the slice on the top. And so therefore, the future of work, if we're going to be innovative, if we're going to be engaging, if we're going to attract the best talent, if we're going to stay market leaders, is about facilitating very high levels of collaboration, not just within a team, but across silos to drive all those business outcomes, particularly process and product innovation in businesses. So kind of outcome number one, I think, what's the workplace of the future going to look like? Highly collaborative, particularly enabled by very, very mobile, very, very flexible, and very, very social technologies, I think. Because that's what underpins collaboration, real-time, right stuff, right time, person-to-person information sharing in that very social, mobile kind of way, which is one of the trends that comes through really clearly in the Future at Work report, is just how rapidly that trend is emerging. So if number one is collaborative, just as frames for the day, then number two in terms of the future at work is all about flexibility. A good client of ours, a global technology company, who I'm sure most of you would be familiar with, realized a couple of years ago that they were having a bit of a problem of culture in their organization. When you walked around the kind of head campus of this organization in in California, when you walked around the head office, you would literally see things like you'd see closed doors. And this is a genuine example of an actual sign on someone's door at the head office, and the sign would say something like, "It's closed for a reason, don't knock." Like, so not exactly the world's most open and collaborative culture, right? They decided that they needed to try and change that culture. And one of the vehicles they were going to use to try and change it was they were going to try and move down a bit of a flexible path. So they went to Amsterdam, because if you're going to try anything flexible, Amsterdam is probably the place you go. Tough crowd. And what they did is they went to the regional office in Amsterdam, right? And they said, we're going to take flexibility and see what we could do if we really had a proper crack at doing flexibility. So they closed the office for about 2 months, right? And they moved it from a funky central city fringe location to out near the airport, just so they could get the type of space that they wanted. And then they took all the offices and desks away. Right now, don't forget, you're talking about an organization where people were so fond of their offices that they would put, keep out signs on the door of them. And they took away offices and they went to a complete hot desk. But they didn't just do like hot desk. They basically said, no, we're basically going to turn the work campus into a cafe style thing. Couches, bean bags, coffee machines. Like, we're just like everything from a funky Gen Y's worst nightmare, basically. Turn it into that sort of environment. And then they said, we're going to ask people not to come to the office, tell them they never have to come in, except once a week for their weekly team meeting. The rest of the time, they can just come in if they want. This company was making a big play into cloud-based collaborative tools at this point, and the way they described it is, if we're going to sell collaboration and flexible work, we're going to make our people eat our own dog food, right? Was they're going to have to use the tools of collaboration and use the tools of flexibility and show that it works to make us better at it. So when they reopened the office, they said, how's this for flexible? You don't have to come to work except once a week for your meeting. Everything else is on your phone or from your laptop, from your, your dongle or whatever. You can work from wherever you want. When you do come in, it's going to be very open plan, that sort of thing. Not only did their engagement scores go through the roof, same category product sales within a year were up 53%. Because, now that people were trying to sell collaboration and flexibility and they had to use collaboration and flexibility every day, they had the right language for it, they knew how it worked. So it was a good strategic play. But secondly, just people's engagement levels and productivity when they weren't having to be tied to a desk, when they could work when they want and how they wanted in the way they wanted, which in Amsterdam is flexibly, they were able to really kind of bring that to the fore. And so I think the future of work, when we talk about flexibility, is really, the way I've described it in the past, is it's distinctive. That the future of work is about letting people bring their own preferences for how they work best, how they're most productive, and how they want to work to the workplace, and provide the capacity to customize your work experience in the same way that Starbucks have been customizing our coffee, if that makes sense, which is necessarily reliant on a very flexible and open approach to information technology, but also crucially backing it up with the HR practices to make it happen. I have a construction engineering client in Melbourne. Sorry, an electrical engineering client in Melbourne, who introduced flexible working arrangements. And then a year later, we're wondering why no one was taking up flexible working arrangements. Turns out that line managers down the line were saying things like, yeah, you're allowed flex time, but if you take that up, let's be honest, you're never going to get a promotion. Which I'm not sure quite realizes the dream of flexible work environment.